I'm going to face a real creative challenge because I have here in the back, I suppose already, a Spanish PowerPoint. I have my papers in English and I'm speaking in English, but I'm thinking in German, so we will see what is coming out. Being a medicine, I would like to start with a short introduction on neuroscience and creativity. Oh, we learned it already. It must be this side. I brought you some images of our brain, and what I want you to take from these images is just that our brain is hierarchical organized. There are very deep and ancient layers which are regulating things like our blood pressure, for example, or our temperature, or our sleep rhythm, and so on. And there are more sophisticated areas which are gradually going up and up, ending up in the cortex cerebral, which is the youngest area of our brain. And here I want you only, because you will read it everywhere, wants to see it, the orbitofrontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex. This is, so to say, our newest inventions, just 2.5 million years old, which is, from evolution point of view, nothing. For us as species, it is the invention to propel us down. New medicine has given us a lot of insight on the working brain. So now we have some techniques where we can spy in the brain during performing and during work. So this is the SPECT, which is orientating at the blood flow during performing different tasks of the brain. You can see it is giving very fine multicolored images like this one you can see on the corner, which parts of the brain are actually working and which parts are ramped down during a given task. So the question is, what can, oh no, you have the question mark in front, whoa. So the question is, what can recent neuroscience tell us about the creative process? Creativity is a fundamental creative activity of the human information processing. And it's generally agreed that it has to include two defined characteristics: the ability to produce work that is both novel and appropriate. The cognitive function is hierarchically ordered, and due to evolutionary processes have been developed even more integrative neuronal structures. All this what we have nowadays, what we can perform in complex thinking, analyzing, and putting a value tag on our decisions, is a result of evolutionary processes and evolutionary pressures standing behind. The cerebral cortex, which I pointed out before, and in particular the prefrontal and the orbitofrontal cortex, is on the top of the hierarchy. You can also say that this cerebral cortex or the prefrontal cortex is representing all our higher abilities of thinking. Here we could name some difference like abstract thinking, analyzing, planning, willed action, source memory, self-reflective consciousness, theory of mind, complex social functioning. All these abilities are only possible for us as a species because we have developed this prefrontal cortex. And I think you are not wondering if I tell you that during creative processes, this prefrontal cortex is working on a very high level, so it is very strong, ramped up. Doesn't work? Run out of battery? So what we know and what we observe is that creativity seems to be related to the ability to silence the inner critic. the parts of the brain that play a role in self-restraint, critical evaluation, and reality checks are powered down, while the areas associated with self-expressions are ramped up during creative processes. It is like you need a kind of a spontaneous processing mode to achieve creative success. Newton, for example, is said to have thought about creativity while watching a falling apple. Kekulé was daydreaming in his study in Ghent when the idea of the benzene structure appeared to him. Einstein thought of relativity while imagining himself riding on a beam of light. So you can see that all these big inventions, all this big progress in science have somewhere in the background a creative spark. But it needs, of course, it needs also knowledge to combine with. As Louis Pasteur said, in the world of observation, chance only favors the prepared mind. No? Doesn't take? Okay. Creativity, as when we sum up, creativity is one of the highest brain functions we can perform as a species. One of the most complex features and one of the most valuable approaches we have at hand as a species for facing our world. You can also name it a problem-solving skill, actually. And you can be sure that evolution wouldn't have put so much effort in developing this prefrontal cortex and wouldn't have made us creative if this would not have been crucial for our existence and our survival as a species. In Austria, I am the director of an education institute which is working all over Austria and is preparing mainly teachers to become psychosociological counselors. They are working in schools, they're working beside also training parents in parenting or counseling, in behavior problems and all these kind of problems. Beside this, they are all very active teachers, and I mean by this very conscious, very aware teachers. Teachers, they are very engaged, they want to change, and they have got a kind of idea about the importance of creativity you have. Nevertheless, they told us very often that they have a kind of problem to transfer this new idea of importance of creativity to parents. And so we as an institute decided to make a small research study on this topic, how parents think about creativity. What are the images parents have in mind when you speak with them about creativity? Because we think it could be very useful to share the same idea as an institution and as parents when we want to develop the children. So we set up a research study and had some qualitative interviews with parents. One question was, is creativity important for your child's future? And I brought you here some quotes parents gave us to this question. They said something like, so many new challenges are occurring due to globalization. The next generation will need a lot of creativity to solve them. Another one said the labor market will request a highly adaptive personality. It will be very important to be a creative person. So what we found out is that parents have a basic understanding that creativity will be a major key competence for your children's future. They feel that. Parents seem, on the other hand, goal-orientated because parents focus more on talents than on the creative process itself. Parents tend to have the possible future outcome in terms of a spatial talent a child develops and will have, due to this talent, a certain position and a certain role in society. And this is mainly the idea parents keep in their mind. So here has to be done some translation process, what the creative process is meaning, and what the talent is on the other hand, to have here a common ground with parents. Another question we asked them was, what role has play in the daily life of your child? I think Paul has given us a very, very clear picture and a very strong understanding how important play and this joyful approach for children is for their own development. And so we ask this question, what role has play in the daily life of your child? And parents answered us like, Lana is only 5 and actually she plays all day long. I encourage that because later on, when she starts with school, there won't be any more time for playing. So you see, here is a clear difference parents are seeing between play and work. The parents tend to reserve play for very young ages. As long as a child is not able to produce academic progress and academic success, parents are ready to give this freedom of play to a child. But afterwards, when there is an academic challenge, the focus is shifting and the focus of importance is shifting. And there comes in a work concept which is, I think it's not very funny normally. We all know it as grown-ups then, and we all suffer. In Austria we have a radio station that is congratulating us when it is Friday, because now life starts, as they tell us, and which is patting us, trying to pat us on the head and the shoulders when it's Monday, because now the very hard part of life is starting. And actually it's a waste of lifetime. And we are doing this to our children from generation to generation. I'm very often saying play is the work of children, and I would like that we all can stay on this level of experience, that what we work, we experience in a certain lightness, in a certain playfulness, in an enjoyable manner. And I think it would help our society on many levels. As I've been introduced, I'm a medicine, and we have very serious rate of the so-called burnout disease. And burnout disease, we would know what it is if we could stick to the concept of play. And I'm sure we would produce, we would be productive the same. But in the moment, what is missing is trust. So what I want to point out, and what we found out in our small studies, that the conception of the world of the present generation of parents is reflecting the necessity to fit in to a given framework. They still carry this belief that a child has to be socialized to fit into a given framework. But I give you the question, will our children in the future as grown-ups still find this given clear frame, or will be their task to create new rules for a globalized world? This might be a new challenge. And this leads me to my last point, if this thing allows it. 5? Yes. Creativity and the evolution of society and possible future requirements in this globalized world. I want to start, because we have here creative atmosphere, with a bedtime story. And once upon a time, about 2.5 million years ago, it was the time when our brain was about 650 grams, and the rudimentary prefrontal cortex was kicking in and saying, I have an idea. A spark of creativity suddenly lit up the brain of this Homo habilis you can see here. And he was the first to use a sharp stone and to cut off meat from a carcass. And from this day on, life started to become easier, because this Homo habilis found a creative way to get much more proteins than generations before. And this enabled his brain to grow and to grow and to become even more creative. The creative act started the success of our species. And creativity is successfully propelling us through the centuries. This we have to bear in mind, and this we have to bear in mind especially and particularly for the coming challenges. If we look at the coming challenges, the situation of a globalized world, we have two key issues. One is the enormous speed of technological changes in the new information technologies. Do you know how long it took until this small telephone with this April where somebody had taken already a bite, needed until 50 million of people were in possession of one? It was half a year. Within half a year, the rollover of this iPhone had arrived 50 million people. Do you know how long it took until radio reached the public of 50 million listeners? It took 50 years. So there's quite a difference in the speed. New technologies are now penetrating. And it's so quick that very often we even don't know what are the implications, how this implication might backfire on our social structure. Even when we look at the modern new information technology, even on the brain structure of our young children using it. We have some very, very alarming research results, and you could say in a very easygoing way that we tend to have this problem that we might create two-dimensional brains only, which it wouldn't be too nice. So the global interdependence in all substantial fields of life is the second key issues. So that's what we need and what we will need, and here there exists a lot of research on this topic, is institutional innovation. New standards of decision-making processes to satisfy the demands of this highly complex environment. This will be very, very necessary, and also to respect an ethical framework. For all this, we will have a lot of abilities which you can subsumize under the title of life artistry. We will need insightful problem-solving skills. We will need integrated emotional and cognitive thinking, self-reflective consciousness, highly cognitive flexibility, complex social functions. We will need the ability of collaborative working. All these things where you need creativity to perform them. And this will be necessary to make our future institutions functioning. And our institutions have to solve the problems of a globalized world. We, in the moment, are not able to do this. So let's remember, we started there, at this Homo habilis. It took us 2.5 million years to arrive here. And now we have just one generation to arrive there. Our children, the growing generation now, will have to be able to perform within this globalized world. They must have this ability to rethink structures new and to govern not the regional, not the local environment, but they have to bear in mind the consequences for the whole globe. So let me come to the conclusions. In principle, we can assume, okay, yes, we can assume that all children are born creative. The problem is to keep them creative, not to destroy this creativity. As Pablo Picasso is saying, all children are born artists. The problem is how to remain as artists as we grow up. Here, school has a very important aspect, and family has a very important aspect, and they have to work hand in hand. Family is the first, is your first nest, is the first input you get as a newborn child, and is the first set of approach to the world. So to say, family, and if you live in a creative family, you will learn, so to say, this mindset how to approach world in a creative way. When you go in a creative school environment and you move in a creative school environment, you get this option from the school sides, and therefore both factors, family and school, have to work hand in hand for keeping our children creative and developing further on their creativity. As a last summing up, I will to put everything together. Creativity is one of the most complex brain functions that our species is able to perform. We should bear this in mind. It is something, it's a gift of evolution we have developed to be survivors. And therefore, I think, just from this evolutionary perspective, we should bear in mind how important this creativity is to us as a species for our further development and for our further survival. Creativity is a fundamental driver of evolving mankind. Parents feel that creativity will play a major role in their kids' future. That is given, they feel this. But still they focus much more on talents than on the creative process itself. Here, teachers have to be the translators to make parents aware that the process of creativity, the process of this creative act is the really important thing and not, so to say, the result. The future will be shaped by global interdependence, and creativity will play a key role in meeting the demands of this highly complex, rapidly changing world.